Good afternoon. I'm Danielle Schenk in the 1011 Now Alert Center with your weekly consumer safety spotlight. Joining me once again is Josh Planos with the Better Business Bureau. How's it going?
It's going well, Danielle. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So today we're talking about a costly equipment scam that left a Nebraskan out more than $10,000. So Josh, what happened there?
Yeah, so Danielle, we received a report in the past week from someone who lost more than $10,000, wired the down payment over to the person at that they thought was a representative of the company, and ultimately lost all of that money. Uh, they were met with delivery delays, promises that ultimately were hollow, and then the company just stopped communicating altogether. And the victim later learned that the company uh, that was selling the equipment was actually owned and used by somebody in Texas. They went the rabbit hole and found that the bulldozer in question that they were trying to purchase was already owned and was not for sale. And what I would caution folks from doing is assuming that this is like just some run of the mill operation. This person in particular said they received multiple purchase contracts via DocuSign. There was, of course, a fake website. There was fake contact information. There was even a fake sales representative who targeted this person. And this is something that we have actually reported on this company, this Pro Equip Agricultural and Construction. But we reported on them in mid October because at the time, there were at least three victims that alleged that they had lost more than $30,000 from this exact. I use company in quotation marks because clearly this is not a company. This is just a fraudulent enterprise. But this is something that has a lot of resources behind it. It's quite sophisticated and unfortunately just nabbed somebody from Nebraska most recently.
So I'm going to try this again. I tested these buttons before and went to take yours and something happened, glitched out here. So I'll try it again. But you mentioned you guys have investigated this company before. Do you kind of know what happened in that case before?
Yeah, it mirrors very neatly what happened in Nebraska. There was a demand for a wire transfer for a down payment for construction equipment. For a lot of folks, they have maybe a vendor in particular that they look to. But if you're trying to do this on the cheap and you're a consumer, which was the case for many of those reports that we received, they're looking on strange corners of the internet for a relationship that doesn't exist with a company, right? And this looks like a real entity, right? This Pro Equip Agricultural and Construction. The website looks legit. They've got a carousel of photos. They have, a sales representative, as the Nebraskan just reported recently, and we reached out to the city of Salina, Kansas, because this is a company that alleges to be based out of there. And the address that they have listed on their website is a vacant lot. We know this because the city of Salina confirmed that information with us, and a consumer actually drove to the location and found that fenced-in, overgrown lot with not equipment that you would be able to purchase. So this is something that has sadly been reported in the past and was just reported by a Nebraskan. There were some high pressure sales tactics involved with most of the reports, indicating that the fantastic deal that you have available to you is going to go away if you don't act in the moment. And unfortunately, that was a deal that someone was unwilling to look past.
Now, somebody did report this to the BBB, and you kind of sent that report showing some of the red flags. How common are these types of high dollar equipment scams?
I mean, I would say they're not uncommon on the consumer side. If you don't have a relationship with a John Deere or a Cat or a larger company, you're looking for a discount somewhere, and in some cases, this is the best possible alternative, right? You buy a bulldozer for $10,000. That's a pretty good deal, depending on where you're looking. But unfortunately, this is not a real website, and websites have never been more sophisticated than they are right now. We seemingly talk, each week about a fake website that passes the smell test and does just enough to get you to believe that it's real. And certainly, that in combination with somebody presenting themselves as the sales representative of the company is going to feel legitimate. It's going to feel like a process that you would normally follow if you were to actually purchase, a high dollar amount product. But one thing that we always recommend, right, is to do a little bit of research on that company, particularly when it's a company you've never heard of before. You want to make sure that they can actually deliver on their promise. And it's so challenging to know that just based on what is sold to you by that company. You really need like an independent third party or at least proven track record from somebody to indicate that this is worth wiring $10,000, which for many of us, that's a life altering amount of money in pursuit of something that may not be real at all.
Hmm. And so, what makes a scam like this with the contracts, the websites, the sales reps, especially dangerous for consumers?
If you were purchasing equipment that might be a common experience for you to purchase it out of market, right? So this person in Nebraska clearly was out of market for, a Salina, Kansas company. You just kind of assume that people give others the benefit of the doubt all the time, right? You assume if somebody gives you an address, they give you contact information, that address is both accurate, that company is licensed, that contact information is purposeful, can be responded to, and you just assume the best. And unfortunately, that's not good enough in 2025 and into 2026. This is something that will continue to happen because it's like there's a checklist of what would amount to a reasonable opportunity for purchasing anything, and a scammer is just going down that checklist and checking that box and the next box and the next box. It might even have payment information included. Why would you even include that you could accept payment if you weren't a real business? Well, because it gets people to give you the benefit of the doubt. And just like we would say with adopting an animal, Danielle, you want to insist on seeing high value equipment in person before you agree to any terms and conditions. That is not unreasonable. I know it would require, in this case, him to travel to Kansas to see that equipment, but that is a lot easier of a process than just assuming that equipment exists. You really have no guarantee until you see it with your own eyes, or you ask that person to, do a FaceTime or a video call with you, so you can see that it does in fact exist. Scammers are really good at deflecting, very basic entry level questions or rebuttals, right? But the more questions you ask, typically, the more the process unravels itself. So ask lots of questions. Don't just assume that because you see something on a website and the website looks, kind of legitimate, that it is that everything is going to go according to plan. Because as now 4 people can attest, uh, that is not the case with this experience.
Hmm. So, some good tips there on avoiding getting scammed. Now, wiring money can be a big red flag when it comes to this. So, why is that payment method so risky?
Yeah, it's very difficult to get that money back once it's been sent over. Scammers are really good at demanding forms of payment that provide the least amount of security and restrictions for the customer, right? And in this case, that is a wire transfer. In some cases, that the legitimate businesses, they certainly offer wire transfers. They also offer alternative secure payment methods, checks, for instance, credit cards, for instance. They never insist on untraceable payment methods. So again, typically this information is presented far enough into the process that the customer doesn't want to walk away from the experience. They just want to seal the deal and move on. But if this is the only way you can pay for the product is with a method that provides very little restrictions, that is something to tread carefully with, if not outright leave altogether. And then as this person learned, this is $10,000 is a lot of money, but that is a good price for a certain amount of equipment. So if you see things that are priced well below market value, you could understand why that might be useful bait for a scam. And at bare minimum, uh, a, something that would cause you to do a little bit more research into the company to ensure that they are an actual company and not someone who's just using bait to get you to act on a price that isn't real.
Hmm. And so, what are some steps that people should take before putting down money, especially thousands of dollars worth on equipment or large purchases like this?
Yeah, I would say getting a second set of eyes on it. We don't have a guarantee that this customer didn't do that, but if the price feels too good, usually that is a helpful cue. We would, of course, encourage that person to look up the company on BBB.org. They would see that this is a company that's at the center of an investigation that is active and in which multiple parties have come forward and said that they lost many thousands of dollars to this company. I would assume that would cause somebody to not proceed with that transaction if they were on the fence about it. It's really, really helpful to get an additional set of eyes, though, on that. Research what the equipment should actually cost. If that $10,000 is 50% below market rate, that's a suspiciously low offer and something to tread carefully with. Certainly, best practice to insist on physically seeing the equipment before providing any sort of payment. And then again, not just assuming that because somebody comes to you with a contract and a sales representative and a spiffy looking website that it is undeniably legitimate. There are scammers that are propping up very, very sophisticated looking businesses. It's almost it looks like they could run the business if they wanted to. That's how good they look. And unfortunately, that's just not good enough in 2025 and into 2026. You need to ensure that that company is real, and that starts with research.
Now, if someone realizes that they have been scammed, what are some steps that they should take?
Time is of the essence when you've been victimized. You file a police report, you report it to bbb.org, contact your bank if the wire transfer went through there. You can certainly file a report with IC3, the FBI. Quick action allows you to have a much better chance of recovering those funds and also preventing others from needing to go through with the experience. So it's of the essence that you collect all of the receipts, all of the documentation that you have, and that'll make both the police report, the report to bbb.org, the report to your bank as smooth and straightforward as possible. The last thing you want is to be on the phone and need to run into a couple different rooms to access the email and things that you've printed out. Just make sure that they're nice and neat and report it as quickly as possible, because we hear from people who report something in the evening and are able to recoup those funds that they wouldn't have if they had waited until the morning. So all of these companies, organizations that I just mentioned have 24-hour lines. It's really important to make that call as quickly as or suspect that something might be amiss.
And so, as we kind of wrap up here, where can people go to report a scam or a suspicious business to the BBB, and just how important is that kind of as scams continue to increase?
Yeah, it's essential, Danielle. bbb.org/scam tracker is the URL. It takes 2.5 minutes to file a report. You can be kept completely anonymous. We are the only report intake form that has a curated walkthrough of what to do next, depending on what you actually report. So presumably, if you experience romance fraud, psychological support would be of use. So we provide that once you have submitted your form. It depends on what it is that you're reporting. If you need to freeze your credit score, if you need to alert your bank, we provide all of that information nice and neat, so you know exactly what to do to reclaim ownership of your story and your experience. But it's really important in 2025 to report your experience, because this is a national crisis. It really is. And it's something that requires significantly more resources, significantly more attention than it has been given. This is something that, it's on a human level, it's ridiculous that this is something that we just anticipate every day to experience a scam and a fraud attempt. And we just, go on like that's a normal part of life. And it really doesn't need to be. And the only way we're ever going to be able to protect people is by knowing that it's actually happening. So, we talk to people regularly who say, I didn't lose $10,000, so why does my story matter? Your story matters a lot, regardless of if you lost any amount of money, because you're alerting the public that something out there is occurring, right? So there's no threshold that needs to be met. This person lost $10,000, but their story would be just as valid if they didn't lose any money at all.
Great insight there. And so, anything else you want to mention about this investigation into this scam business?
I would say that it's ongoing. Their scammers are really not interested in responding to communication. Uh, I know that police departments are looking into this enterprise, specifically that the department in Salina, Kansas, where the company allegedly is based, even though we know it is not. I would say that it's really important to report things over the final week of the year too. We're going to see a lot of people who are getting scammed, purchasing construction equipment and holiday gifts and everything in between. So I would encourage you to come forward if you experience something to report your experience and be able to protect the public.
All right, Josh, thank you so much for joining us here today, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you, Danielle.
Well, stay tuned to our website and follow us on all our social platforms, and make sure to download our app on Roku for the latest news of the day. From our newsroom to wherever you are, we'll see you on the next stream.
1011 News is everywhere. Download our smart TV apps and follow us on social media at 1011 News.